Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Tennessee Informer. Thank you all for being with us. What is it like to be persecuted for being proud of your heritage and speaking out about it? What's it like to be accused of being a racist even though it's not true? What's it like to lose your livelihood simply for speaking at a politically incorrect event? Have you ever been doxxed? Do you understand what it is and how hard it can be on anyone, especially with a family to provide for? Our guest tonight has been in that situation and wrote a book about it. His name is Joshua Doggrell, a police officer from Anniston, Alabama. He's here to tell his story of being persecuted by the Southern Poverty Law Center that led him to write his book about the experiences in a book called Doxxed. You need to hear his story and how he overcame this PC idea run amok. So stay with us. But first, a word from our sponsor, LifeWave, a unique product using light reflection to activate the body's own natural energy to support healing, improve performance, and combat aging without drugs or stimulants. Check it out, and we'll be right back.
Light, the energy of life itself. Since the beginning of time, light has sustained us, fueled our growth, and shaped the world. Even Einstein recognized that everything we are is made of light. But what if we could harness the light within us, not just to live, but to renew, restore, and rejuvenate? Introducing LifeWave X39, the first product in the world that activates stem cells using our body's own light. Backed by clinical research, multiple patents, and over 10 years of stem cell research, a revolutionary wearable light technology that unlocks the power of activating our own stem cells with a single, safe, affordable, non-transdermal patch that puts you back in control of how you look, feel, and perform. Unlike drugs or chemicals, X39 works naturally, awakening your body's ability to heal and thrive. It's time to unlock your full potential, restore your vitality, and embrace a healthier, more vibrant you.
Now to our guest, Joshua Doggrell. Hey, thanks for being with us. How's it going tonight?
Hey, Dave, it's a pleasure, and it's going very well here in Northeast Alabama.
Well, glad to finally get you on. We had to cancel a while back, and I appreciate you being patient with us. Let's get right to it. Tell us about your background and your work as both an officer and an author.
All right, so I started being a peace officer in the state of Alabama in 1997 here in my home county, Calhoun County, named after John C. Calhoun in Northeast Alabama. And went to work as a deputy sheriff at the Calhoun County Sheriff's Office, worked there for 9 years, and then transferred over to the municipal head seat of government in Calhoun County, Anniston Police Department. And I worked there for about another 9 years. During the times that I was little, I was proud to be a Southerner. I studied a lot of Southern heritage, read a lot of Southern history, and got very involved in that. And when I was in college in Tuscaloosa at the University of Alabama,
Roll Tide.
I became Roll Tide, yes. I became affiliated with a group called the Southern League back then. They were changed their name years later because of a dispute with the baseball league of the same name. So they changed it to the League of the South. And for 20 years, I was a very proud member of that organization. Met a lot of friends, a lot of pastors, professors, intellectuals who advanced the Southern cause. But it was a politically incorrect group, and it wound up costing me my job with Anniston in 2015.
So you've been involved with them for a good while. Now, you were an actual member, or you just kind of, read their material and maybe attended some events?
I became a member in 1995 while I was still at college at Alabama, and then remained a dues paying member through 2014. With a group like the League of the South, there's always the mandate to cull your nuts, and we had some radicals that we bounced out a few times, and then so I was a member throughout the time of being a deputy sheriff. And then when I was hired at Anniston, and they knew it, they questioned me about it. I was investigated in 2009 in an internal investigation with the city. I was cleared of any wrongdoing. I was told that I was not against any policies and I had not violated any laws and I didn't have anything to worry about. But 6 years later, in 2015, the climate had changed nationally with Ferguson and with the riots in Baltimore and North Carolina. and then we had a change of leadership in the city too, from people who were solid law enforcement cops to people who were not so forthright in defending their own. And when the stuff hit the fan in June of 2015, I was sacrificed on the altar of political correctness.
So, what was the investigation about in '09?
In '09, a member of the community had made a complaint to the city of Anniston that I was a member, and I had started a local chapter in Anniston of the League of the South called the John C. Calhoun chapter. That was covered by our local newspaper, the Anniston Star. They did an article on it the night before our first meeting, and they did an article on it the day after our first meeting. And so the publicity was there, a complaint was made, an investigation was launched, and I was the ultimate outcome of the investigation is that I was cleared of any wrongdoing.
So there's nothing wrong with actually celebrating your heritage and your history, and oh, by the way, actually knowing history. And Calhoun, that's somebody that more people should read about, in my opinion.
Absolutely. He was a great Southern statesman. He was a great Southerner and a great American.
Yeah, I think JFK even quoted him, and I think JFK said that he was one of his favorite figures from history or something to that effect. So he, just like with a lot of the people from the South from that era, they were, people in the North for years, for decades, thought highly of him, just like Lee and others in Bedford Forest. And then all of a sudden, it seems to be not only out of fashion, but now we have to investigate you, and now we have to brand you X, Y, or Z.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. And a lot of mileage is gained from that type of activity. Pat Buchanan wrote about this a lot and spoke about it a lot, how there was a time in this country's history, post-Reconstruction, prior to the 1950s and 60s, where Northerners and Southerners had reached this point where we could agree to disagree on some things,
Right.
but we each had our history and our heritage that was important to us and we were allowed to have that.
Right.
That is no longer the case, of course, in this country.
So the event you spoke at was a League of the South event. And now I know you're no longer a member of the League of South, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. And was that because of this event or combination of things?
No, it had nothing to do with the event in which I gave a speech. The League of the South, again, I mentioned it earlier, any kind of organization like this, you have to really be on your P's and Q's about the people that you let in.
Right.
And so groups and movements can be hijacked, and there are times where you have to make a decision. And I was a member of this group in 2015 at that point for 20 years.
Right.
I'd invested 20 years of hard work in my life into it.
Yeah.
And so when you see things start to slip off the rails, you have to make a decision. Am I just going to jump ship, or am I going to try to right the wrongs here? We'd done that before. We'd gotten rid of some folks that we needed to get rid of.
Yeah.
And so in about 2013, 2014, 2015, we began that drift again of people coming in that we didn't need there, in my opinion. And so I stuck around to try to right the wrong, because I had been told by the city of Anniston that I had been cleared of any wrongdoing, and if they had any questions, they'd come back and ask me.
Right. Okay. So now the event that did cause you problems, though, was speaking at a League of the South event in 2015, correct?
So the speech was actually in 2013. It was on June 21 of 2013 in Wetumpka, Alabama, at the National Convention of the League of the South. But it wasn't until 2 years later that the speech was recovered on YouTube by the Southern Poverty Law Center, and they made a spectacle of it.
So what was it you said in the speech that was just so bad that they had to jump on it?
Well, I would say that I don't know that there was anything in the speech that was just so bad. It was mostly a speech about gun rights and about Southern heritage and about cultivating police officers into the conservative movement and the Southern heritage and the Southern independence movement. But by the time the Southern Poverty Law Center had gotten done with it, they had spliced in imagery from a 1961 bus burning in Anniston, which occurred, of course, before I was alive. So, of course, I wasn't involved in it. But by the time they got through with their 2.5-minute blurb, They had associated me and the department into the most virulent, racist organization that they could have. That's their specialty. That's what they do.
Oh yeah, yeah. And they've had some scandals of their own in the last few years having to do with money. And I think they are hopefully losing some of the. I think the FBI is at least officially no longer using them.
That is correct. But them and the Anti-Defamation League, the more that people delve into these two groups, they realize what they are. They're money-making machines. They're far-left machines. They're Marxist organizations that target anything Christian, Southern, and conservative.
Right, right. So basically 2 years later, after you made the speech, that's when they attack you. That's when they start the videos, and that's when they start calling for your resignation.
Yes, sir.
And did you get any defense initially? I mean, did your superiors, the people that you worked for, did any of them defend you initially, or did they just go straight to caving?
When the heat got turned up, they went straight to caving. But as I was put on trial at the Civil Service Board where I had appealed my termination. So there is the whole transcript of that is public information. I quote a lot of it in my book. So the chief of police was notified on May 28th of 2015 about the speech, and he was being pressed by the SPLC to do something. He came to my office that day and told me about it. He asked me if there was any kind of smoking gun. I said, no, take a look at the speech, view it in its entirety. And he did. And he assigned the internal affairs lieutenant to look at it as well. Both of them looked at it. My direct supervisor, the administrative captain, looked at it. All three of them told me they found nothing in there that was against policy, against the law, that I was within my rights as my civil rights and my constitutional rights. And so there it sat from May 28th all the way till 20 days later on June 17, when the Southern Poverty Law Center launched their hit piece on me on their hate watch list. Once that made the internet and once that made the rounds, then I was put on administrative leave that day.
On what grounds? What are legal grounds to put somebody on administrative leave for in a police force? And I've never been in law enforcement, so I'm just curious. I would still think they would have to have some level of standard to put somebody on administrative leave.
Administrative leave is considered to be not punitive. I was still on paid leave at that time, so it doesn't take a lot. They were presented with this information. They launched an internal investigation. On June 17th, I was told by the chief of police in his office to expect to be on administrative leave for about a month while they went through the process of looking into this. However, on the night of June 17 of 2015, to our north in Charleston, South Carolina, a 21-year-old man named Dylan Roof walked into a black church and murdered 8 people and wounded several others. And on June 18, there were 2 stories on the news around our neck of the woods. One, Dylan Roof, and 2 was me. And by that time, I think my goose was cooked with the city officials in Anniston, and I was deemed sacrificial.
Now, you kind of hit on the topics that you covered in the speech. Well, I guess what was your overall goal of the speech? What was the overall intent of the message, and what was your reason for the speech, I guess?
I was asked to speak on, in the title of the speech was Cultivating the Goodwill of Peace Officers. The folks in the league knew that I was a peace officer, and I was tasked with how going after and trying to recruit and cultivate the goodwill of peace officers nationwide was a good thing for that organization, that there were many common grounds that we had. There were many views that we shared.
Yeah. And there was nothing with the league at the time anyway that was overtly racist, or that people could read and say, oh, well, that's blatant. There was nothing about the league at that time that was racist, correct?
Yeah, not in my opinion, but now you're always going to have those that's going to say that anytime people gather with this kind of banner in view that they're going to be that. I try not to even use the word racist anymore because it all depends on what we're talking about. We have to define the terms before we have an engagement. There are many, or there are some in this country that think if you're born white that you're racist. So I guess
Yeah,
I'm guilty of that. I try not to use it because it is such an ill-used term anymore.
right.
I don't think so, though. There was nothing in the group at that point that led me to believe that it was anything evil or anti-Christian, or I wouldn't have been a part of it.
Yeah. Racist is almost as meaningless in this day and age as conservative Republican.
Labels tend to get misused and hijacked too. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So how long from this time until they said, okay, you're gone?
So they put me, the SPLC hit piece came out on the 17th of June. I was put on administrative leave that day, and recall that the chief of police told me to expect to be on administrative leave at least a month,
But that's still paid leave, though.
paid leave.
Okay.
And then the Dylan Roof thing happened that evening. And 2 days later, on June 19th, at a press conference, I was fired.
So you weren't even there. There was a press
was not
conference
even there.
that announced that you were fired.
I was not even there.
What's the normal procedure when somebody is on administrative leave and, okay, now they've decided they've investigated and discovered whatever smoking gun, but we really know the smoking gun was their lack of backbone, but all the same, what's the normal process on that? It's certainly not go and have a press conference and tell the person he's fired before you've set him down and told him or her why they're fired.
No, that's highly irregular. The normal process would be that they called the employee in, explained the charges to him, had a conversation about whether or not they were going to appeal the decision. As a matter of fact, if it gets to the point of an employee being terminated, most agencies would be, if not embarrassed, at least want to lower the volume of possible media coverage on something like that. This was June 19th was also a Friday. It was done at about 3 o'clock, one of those Friday press conferences where everybody could jump in their cars and go home for the weekend and hide from it. It was also Father's Day weekend. So that left me and my family in total disarray for not only that weekend, but the months and years ahead.
So what happened that following Monday? Did you have to go in and what did they tell you?
So that following week, I called my direct supervisor, who was Captain Greg Feazell, and I said, well, so I'm going to appeal this. And he said, well, actually, you're not fired yet. They have to serve you with papers before that becomes official. I said, well, I saw this press conference 3 days ago where the city manager made it clear there that I was terminated. He said, well, you're actually still on administrative leave, even though he said that. So they had to come to my house and serve me with papers. And then even by the civil service rules, which are codified in state law, once I appealed them, I'm still not terminated. I'm considered suspended. So from the time I appealed that the next week to the Civil Service Board, and by this point, late June, until I finally was granted a trial on the first day was in late or mid-August, I was still considered suspended, although it was announced to the world that I had been fired.
Suspended without pay at this point, right?
Suspended without pay. Right.
Okay, so you only had pay for basically a few days after they
That's correct.
did. Okay, wow. Okay, so then in August, what did they say? What was their justification for firing you in August?
We wound up having 3 days of trial. The first day in August was because the current police chief and the past immediate police chief were not going to be able for the full day in September. So they testified, and then we had a full day of testimony on September 15 and another full day on September 17 of 2015. And the Civil Service Board wound up affirming the city manager's decision to fire me on the grounds that I had conduct unbecoming an officer, that I had affiliated with persons of ill repute, that I had engaged in disorderly conduct with a speech that I had given, and that I had given the speech in violation of the departmental policy that I needed the chief of police's reproval, although that policy in particular stated that only occurred, that reproval was only necessary if I was on duty and representing the department.
Okay, but let's back up too, because
Okay.
you had already been cleared on this. They had already done the investigation, right? After your speech, they had already done the investigation?
Theoretically. Yeah.
Okay, but I mean,
when we
just want to make sure I'm tracking. The speech was in 2013.
That's
Right.
correct.
And there was an issue then, and they investigated and said that you did nothing wrong, right?
Well, now the initial investigation that they cleared me was in 2009.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. See, I've been a member since 1995. I had started a local chapter in 2009, and that's what prompted the first internal investigation.
Okay. But then the speech that you gave was in
2013.
2013.
Yep.
But now we're talking 2015, right?
Right.
So from the time, so that had they ever had the opportunity or reason to review that speech between 2013 and 2015?
I don't think they had. I don't think that they.
It wasn't. It wasn't made an issue. It was not an issue until
Not
2015.
an issue.
Okay.
No.
But what they charged you with, though, I mean, like you said, the needing the clearance ahead of time only applied if you were going to be on duty, right?
On duty or representing the agency, and in the fact that I worked at Anniston did not occur until the 12th minute of the speech, at which time I immediately voiced a disclaimer that although I worked there, I was not speaking on behalf of them, and I was only speaking as my capacity as a citizen, as a private citizen. And in the kangaroo court that was the civil service trial, they said that the fact that I gave a disclaimer nullified the disclaimer because I had brought it to the attention of the audience and the attendees at that point. Which I think is a precedent in the history of American jurisprudence, that giving a disclaimer automatically disqualifies the disclaimer.
Only a lawyer could come up with that. That's insane.
And they also said because I had a smile on my face that I must have been not serious about it.
Because you smiled, you weren't serious about the disclaimer.
Right. I don't know of any case law based on this until now, but apparently if you smile or give a disclaimer, that nullifies said disclaimer. At least it did in the kangaroo court of Anniston, Alabama in 2015.
Is that like an aggravated improper disclaimer? I mean, that's insane.
I thought it was pretty ridiculous.
So is there anybody that was standing up for you, or anybody that was at least disgusted by the process and said, hey, wait a minute, we're not doing this right?
Well, there were plenty of people like that. They were not necessarily making themselves public. And we did, in my book details, that we subpoenaed many officers at Anniston, and they were character witnesses who all testified that they had never seen me act in such a way where I would discriminate against anybody or treat anybody unfairly. And to their credit, they testified to that. And I am sure that the city of Anniston tried their best to get somebody to say otherwise, but nobody took the stand and did so. So in a way, I guess you could say people stood up as far as when they were subpoenaed, they came and told the truth.
Right.
However, my dad was a police officer at Anniston too, and one of the things he said on the day I was fired was that if this had happened when he was working, there'd be 150 officers on the steps of City Hall protesting this. So nobody took overt steps that they could have, at least people of influence.
Yeah, nobody took initiative to step up.
Yeah. Which this is one of those issues, Dave. I come from a profession of very courageous men and women, people who will stand in the face of fire. But there is nothing in 21st century America that can make a white man puddle like a puddle of goo than being called a racist. That will absolutely disarm them, defang them, and make them cower.
Yeah. And if it's not true, it shouldn't.
If it's not true, it should not. You're right.
Yeah.
But like so many things, if you throw feces at a wall, you're just hoping that some of it sticks, and that seems to be the modus operandi of people like the SPLC.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about the SPLC. Obviously, you've got some firsthand experience. And some people are familiar with them, others are not. But anything you want to let the people know, now here's your chance.
Okay. Well, they've been around a long time. They started. They got their start with being an anti-Klan organization, but they soon realized how much mileage and how much money, more importantly, can be made from labeling people hateful people or racist people. And so their list of hate groups and watch groups grew over the years because they realized that they could rake more money in by labeling more and more people and organizations as hate groups. And I heard it said, I can't remember who to attribute it to, but they were a money-making organization masquerading as a law firm. They don't go to court. They get sued pretty regularly, but they make so much money that they're able to pay off the people that sue them, and they just keep on rocking. But they have been, like you said earlier, the FBI has quit using them. Most police agencies quit using them. Going back to their donors, George Clooney was one that gave them over $1 million one year, just to give you an idea of the far left supporters that they have with deep pockets.
Yeah.
So they are fast and loose with their labels, with their epithets, and especially for Christian organizations and especially for Southern organizations, they paint with a broad brush.
Yeah. And you're not the only one that's had to deal with this in the South and in other places, but they do. They're based in the South, and that seems to be a lot of their focus. And a lot of times, city or county officials, they'll just cave at the first sign of trouble. I mean, I've seen it on totally unrelated things, like even within the school system. I've heard school board members, and not in relation to this, but well, if we do that, we might get sued. Well, you can get sued for anything. So we better just do what this left-wing group wants us to do, or we better not do what they don't want us to do. So they just fold ahead a time and make sure that there's, that don't have to go to court. We don't want to get sued. So I tell you what, this whole lawsuit thing has made cowards of so many people in this country. It's pathetic. And, we got to think about that when you elect somebody, when you put them in charge. Are they going to roll over when somebody mentions lawsuit? Are they going to stand up and do the right thing?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's the easy thing to do. It's just roll over, to throw people under the bus, to try to shake it off your plate of responsibility as quickly as you can, no matter who you hurt in the process.
Yeah. And I should have looked this up. I know the SPLC got in some trouble within the last couple of years about some of their funds, about some of the money that they've taken in, and I think they have some in offshore accounts. I don't remember the specifics, but if you're interested, you can Google SPLC and financial issues or whatever and see what comes up. So now let's talk about how you actually dealt with this, because this obviously had an impact on you and your family. You'd been in law enforcement for a good bit by this time. So how long before you got a job that was comparable to what you had?
Yeah, I had been in at over 18 years at that point. Wow. That was my career, and it was really all I knew how to do. I hadn't worked another job since I was a teenager. And so when I got out of that, not only with the loss of that vocation, but with the stigma that came from being in the news media, right. I could not find a job, period, around here. Not in my home county, not in an adjacent county. I tried to work retail at Christmas time. I could not find a job, and we know how that is. Yeah. I wound up having to apply for unemployment, where I went to classes where they told me, well, you need to apply in places in which you have experience. And I was like, you have no idea what kind of situation I'm in. So I was unemployed, and let's see, I was also, by the way, I was spending so much of my time with my legal defense that I was intent on, at least in that early stage, of getting my job back. I was planning on appealing it and getting it back. But when I lost that, I realized that I'm going to have to go elsewhere. So I wound up getting a job in Birmingham, which is about 70 miles to our west. I was having to drive 5 days a week running a rental uniform route across the state. Spent a lot of time working that. Saw my family less and less. I wound up then working at a mill as an extrusion coordinator in Roanoke, about 55 miles from my house. And it was 2 years before I could get another job in my home county after that.
Wow. So how did your family and your friends, I mean, how were they during this time?
One thing that was a blessing from the Lord in all this was that this kind of trauma shows you who your true friends are. Now, my wife still suffers psychological damage to this day, as do I, but she never has even read the book. She can't stand to get through it because it brings back such horrible memories to her. But we closed ranks as best we could. We leaned on the good friends that we had. It became clear to me who was and who was not a good friend, and I'm so appreciative of those who were. And we also had the unexpected blessing in all this of this wound up making state and national news. And I never had to get a loan or ask for any money on my legal defense. We had letters and money coming in from all over the country from mostly people I didn't even know.
Great.
So, how about that?
That's great.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, because I was wondering too, you're having to drive all this distance. You're probably not making as much as you were. And then you got the legal bills, which those things add up real quick.
They sure do. Yeah. Yeah. I was an administrative lieutenant at Anniston when I was fired. And when I wound up finally obtaining employment again, it was a $32,000 a year pay cut from what I was making. And my wife is a homeschool teacher and a homemaker. So my earnings are
Right.
all that we have. But we were able to do it, and we were able to pay the legal bills from the money that came in through mostly anonymous donations.
And now, how did those just start coming in? I mean, you didn't have a GoFundMe account. That was before that time. How did that happen? Do you know?
So there was some kind of, I can't remember if it was GoFundMe or not, but some of our friends made some kind of account on Facebook. But also the league wound up putting stuff out for contributions. And there was a newspaper, or I say a periodical that whose title I can't even remember, who put something out. And but among the three of those, I wound up getting some. I got most. It was from all over the country and a few from Canada too. So
Oh, wow.
people who had been through some kind of similar experience that wanted to help. Sometimes it was checks in the amount of $5 or $10, but they added up, and I wound up being able to pay my legal fees with that.
That's great.
Sure
So how long from the time that you lost your job and you're a police officer again today in the same county, right?
Yes, I am.
It's same county, but not for the city. So
Not for the city.
how long was that time frame? How long was that stretch?
A little over 4 years.
4 years. Well, that's a
Yeah,
long
so
time.
it was September of 2015 when the Anniston Civil Service Board affirmed the city's decision, and it was November of 2019 when the Calhoun County Sheriff called me and met with me and offered me a job back as a deputy.
Wow. Were you ever expecting that to happen?
Absolutely not. I knew the sheriff, but we had not spoken in years, and we had known each other. We worked together with the first stint I had at the sheriff's office, and I certainly didn't expect him or really anybody else. I had come to grips with the fact that part of my life was over, and for him to call me and ask me to come eat, and he had called me because The Guardian, which is a left-wing rag out of England, had called him. They did an extensive story on me that year and had asked him for comment. So that was what started it. But,
He gave him a comment, didn't he?
well, I guess he did, but ultimately, but I certainly didn't expect that. And he was very courageous for doing that because he took a lot of heat on it. and there was more negative publicity after that. But one of the great things that I remember him being quoted at in our local Anniston Star newspaper was that the Anniston City Council had come out telling him that they didn't want him to hire me, and then they passed a unanimous resolution that after he hired me that I couldn't police inside their city limits. And one of the great quotes that he had was, "I am not going to let the Anniston City Council bully me or any of my deputies." So he stood up.
Yeah, you got a good sheriff there. You've got a good sheriff there. Those are hard to find, people that'll stand up for you like that. So hats off to your sheriff.
Yeah.
Do you want to share his name or not?
Oh, yeah. His name is Matthew Wade, and he actually retired last year. So we have a new sheriff now named Fallon Hurst. But I've known him and worked with him for a long time, too. But Matthew Wade is the name of the sheriff that went out on the limb and hired me back in 2019.
So what was the reception like when you went back among the other officers there? I mean, obviously it's not the same ones you were working with in the city, but what was the response? What was the environment like? Were they like, "Hey, glad to have you here. Sorry for all you went through," or were they standoffish, or what?
A little mixture, and I'm sure a lot of things that were said were not said within earshot, especially if they were negative. But overall, it was pretty welcoming, and even to this day, at least to my knowledge and to my face, I don't get a lot of negative feedback. I hope that they have judged me based on knowing me, talking with me, and working with me. And that's how it should be, rather than what somebody like the SPLC smears you with.
Right. So do you plan on do you have any options of taking legal recourse against Anniston?
Oh, I've let all that go. We did file a federal lawsuit against Anniston, and I had an attorney. We wanted to go outside of Anniston to try to get out of this morass that's here. And so we hired an attorney out of Montgomery, but he wasn't the best attorney, and he was very neglectful on some areas. And we wound up filing this federal lawsuit. We also filed an appeal to the Civil Service Board's decision to circuit court. So we had two going at the same time there. And in my opinion, he mismanaged both of them. One of the things about the federal lawsuit is that it wound up getting into the hands of a lady named Virginia Hopkins, who is a federal judge who lives in Anniston. And I said, this is what we're trying to avoid. She country clubs with these same people. Ultimately, we lost that. We could have appealed that to the Court of Civil Appeals and maybe to the Supreme Court, but that's a lot of money. And by that time, I had a job back here, and I was just content to let it go.
Yeah. So how would you define, based on all of your experiences, how would you define cancel culture? Because that's what that was part of.
It absolutely was. I had somebody say that you were on the cusp here, at least locally, of cancel culture because of what was going on in 2015 nationally. But that is, there's people that don't want to hear what you have to say. They don't want to debate what you have to say. They don't want to have to defend what they say are their own views and proclamations. So their idea is to shut you up. And they will do so by any means necessary. If it means targeting your family, if it means coming after your job, if it means smearing you in the press, both local, state, and national, they will absolutely do that so that you don't have a platform to speak from anymore.
Yeah, and social media is no help in that situation, is it?
That's right. That's right. And I had people after all this say, well, what you should do is you should move off to some far distant land or go to another area of the country where you can start over. But you can't do that. It's with the internet in these days, this isn't like the days where you could pick up and move 500 to 1,000 miles away and start over. The past follows you.
Yeah, well, you could do that, and maybe for a little while, but at some point in time, there's pretty good odds hey, this is this guy.
This is that guy,
yeah.
Right?
And now you're away from any support you might have. You move to a place where you don't have any family or established friends.
That's right. And one thing I've learned through all this, the biggest mistake that I made from the time this started, I took legal counsel when I first sought it, when I was put on administrative leave, and I was told, don't say anything. Get off social media. Don't say anything, which might still be good advice for a criminal trial. Right. Especially if you're guilty. But if it's a civil trial that's being played out in the court of public opinion and in the press, I should have come out swinging from the beginning. I should have told them I've already been investigated about this. A lot of people are still surprised at that. Uh, I should have definitely come out with gloves on and swinging from the front of this. And so now here we are, removed from it 11 years and still facing it, and I just embraced it. This is we're going to have to live with this. It's a chance to share my story. It's a chance to also share what the Lord did for me and share the gospel of Jesus Christ. And there's people out there that suffer from this. They need to hear from other people that have been through it. So if I can do that.
Is that why you wrote the book? So not only to say, hey, look, this is what happened to me and how unfair it was, but what happened to you. And you said one thing you would do differently is not be quiet. You would have spoken out.
Absolutely. That was the worst mistake I made.
So should public employees do speeches? What do you think?
Well, now that's an individual decision based on the topic than the organization involved. Everybody's got to make a decision. But if you were doing what you believe in and you're not violating policies and laws and you're representing something that you feel a lot strongly about, then why shouldn't they be able to give speeches or weigh in just like any other citizen?
Absolutely. So, any other closing thoughts? And I do want to advertise your book a little bit.
Mm-hmm. The thing to do, we were given opportunities to not only stand up for ourselves, but stand up for other people. Had, like my dad said, there been more people willing to do what they knew was right, then I think that the city wouldn't have been able to get away with what they did. There is power in numbers. It is very hard to fight City Hall, as we found out. So many times when I went in there, I was looking around. I was having to take off work, and everybody else is getting paid, from the city attorney prosecuting me to the judge to my attorney to the people there for the city. So it is extremely difficult to do that, and you need a groundswell of support. There are people out there, your voice coupled can matter, and it only emboldens the entities that do this when you allow them to do it.
When you sit down and shut up, and when you don't stand up for somebody that you know is being wrongly prosecuted, you're only encouraging the bad people to do what they're doing. How big is Anniston? I've been through there, but it's been years.
We've got a population in the city of about 25 to 30,000. So I guess that could still be considered small town America.
It's still not huge. I mean, no. A lot of people know each other.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. And if that kind of thing happening, you would think in a small town, especially in the South, you'd think more people would have stood up. But I don't know. We've allowed the left to get away with way too much. And I think that's kind of changing. I hope it's changing. I hope that we're, going to put this DEI and all this woke garbage and this cancel. I hope we're going to cancel the cancel culture is what I hope.
I hope so too. It would be great. And again, perhaps when somebody does stand up and see some modicum of victory, that it encourages other people.
So the book's been out for a while now?
About a year.
About a year. How's it doing?
But it's average. I guess so. It's average. We're pleased just to get the word on the shelves. Shotwell Publishing out of South Carolina is the publishing company. Yep. Clyde Wilson, who is a Southern historian icon, is the head of that. He's been a huge encouragement to me over the years, and glad that they picked it up, and they've done a wonderful job with it.
Yeah, and Clyde Wilson's the expert on Calhoun, right?
Yes, he wrote the Calhoun papers, and he is absolutely the current expert on John C. Calhoun.
Yeah, and Shotwell's a great organization. I mean, they put out the books that you can't get published other places because the publishers are either just so politically correct that they don't want it out there, or they're spineless, however you want to look at it.
Yep. They're a wonderful organization.
Yeah. Well, hey, any closing thoughts?
We're just trying to live day by day here and do the best we can by the Lord. The opportunities like this come, and I'm glad that you invited me onto the show to tell the story. Hope that people will look at the book or call me up and like I said, we embrace it now.
Yeah.
I hide from nothing, and I'm very happy to talk about it.
Have you got a website?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right.
Maybe I should.
Yeah, that's an idea. Yeah. But hey, well, thanks for coming on. Good to have you on, and I hope the book does well. And just hey, thank you for standing up on this and not going off, slinking off somewhere and hiding and just hoping to never be, never to have to face anybody again, because that's what a lot of people would have done. A lot of people would have done that. So, once again, thank you for that, and we'll definitely have you back on sometime. You plan on doing any? Let me ask you two things. How much longer do you think you'll work for the police force? How much longer do you have?
So if the Lord allows it, I've got about 9 or 10 more years before I can retire, and I'll trudge through that because I'm looking forward to it. Nope.
And then you can be like a full-time public speaker, right?
Public speaker, author, rabble rouser, however.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, hey, once again, appreciate you coming on. You take care.
Enjoyed it.
I want to thank the audience for taking the time to watch our program tonight. Please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons as well as the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We appreciate your support. Check out our audio podcasts on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and other platforms as well. Sign up for our weekly newsletter at our website, teeninformer.com. Find and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. This Wednesday, 7 p.m., we will have a special show with Gary Lowe of Knoxville, who has filed a complaint about Marsha Blackburn's possible violation of state and federal campaign laws. And next Monday, February 16th, at a special time, 2 p.m., we will have Walter Kennedy, the commander-in-chief of the SCV, one of the Kennedy twins. He's going to be here to tell the whole ugly truth about our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln. A nice touch for President's Day. Maha Day on the Hill, February 17th at 9 a.m. at the Cordell Hall Building, 425 John Lewis Way in Nashville, Tennessee. Please take the time to check out our other shows brought to you by the West Tennessee TV. Go to westtntv.com or myparistv.com. You can find links to the Mike Weatherford Show and Sportscast Show with Jeremy Bucklew. Tomorrow night, Mike welcomes Lauren Pinkston, an independent who is also running for governor of Tennessee. She's challenging the two-party system. Find out what she's all about on the Mike Weatherford Show. And then, Sunday, February 15th, 7:30 p.m. Sportscast, Jeremy welcomes the head coaches of the Patriot baseball and softball teams and their plans to get ready for 2026 this spring. This is a great show if you live in the northeast part of Tennessee. That's Sportcast with Jeremy Bucklew. That's it for now, so good night from Paris, Tennessee, that is.